Good morning, everybody. It's a early Monday morning, like we're going like real proper adult kind of thing today. I've got Jeff Roth with me. Jeff Roth is a member of the Metropolitan Planning Commission. We hear them referenced all the time if you're watching commission or city county meetings, and especially when we get into zoning and development and all that part of conversation. And so in my standard way, instead of trying to ask somebody else what they do, I'll just ask the person that does the job. So I reached out to the commission office and asked for somebody that had nothing better to do than talk to me early on a Monday morning. And Jeff threw his name in the ring, and we've been playing a little bit of tag trying to get this worked out, but we're here. We are Almost in Agreement, almostinagreement@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We also have a website. It is up and running. It is called almostinagreement.com. You can go on there, learn more about us, hear all the episodes that we have available, or if you prefer, any of your major podcast providers has all the episodes as well. While you're anywhere and doing anything that involves us, put like nice things and likes and shares and all those things so that we can help us grow and get a bigger audience. Because there's a lot of stuff going on here in town, and we're trying to figure out what it is and who's doing it. So stick around. We got Jeff Roth, everybody. I'm getting well practiced at my intros. I'm not going to lie.
Sounds good.
All right. So, Jeff, we talked a little bit last week, mostly about scheduling, but in my failure to schedule, I wanted to follow up on some of the specifics. So you had mentioned to me, and I guess this is a good starting point, that there are 15 board members, 7 appointed from the city, 8 appointed from the county.
Yes, that's right.
Is there, how does one go about becoming a commissioner?
Well, I think normally your people are nominated, or the city mayor and the county mayor make the appointments, and then they're ratified by the county commission and or the city council. In my case, I was appointed during Tim Burchett's term, his second term as mayor, and he called me up and asked me if I'd serve, so I agreed to, and I've been there ever since.
Okay, so while we're on the employment part of the job, so it's a full-time position with the city or county, rather?
No, it is not. It's a completely volunteer, part-time.
That's dumb. You should have said no.
Board. What's that?
So that's dumb. You should have said no. No money, nothing.
It
no
is
prestige.
Nothing, no.
Nobody. Everybody knows you exist, but don't know what you do. So it's not like you get credit for
Right.
anything. So that's kind of lame.
Well, the other thing is normally we make half the people in the room mad with every decision.
Right. Of course. That's how. That anybody in that the assembly room B or whatever there at City County. That's all they do all day is piss half of a room off. Okay. So, are there any things that? Was there anything specific about you that Burchett wanted for it? I guess that's it. What's the job in and of itself? Give us a nutshell version of the job.
So basically what we do is we review, so someone wants to either rezone their property, reclassify their property, build a subdivision, or build a building per se. And if the property's zoned correctly, they'll come to us with a use zone review, our staff. And I can't tell you how big the staff is. There's several, maybe 45 or 50 people on staff there, and they prepare reports and they review the zones, they review the rules, and they submit a report to us as a commission, and we review it. And we have our Tuesday on Tuesday. The second Thursday is our meetings every month, and on Tuesday we have a agenda review at lunchtime where we go through all the contested cases that are not on consent, and we get a report from staff as to they'll recommend either approval or denial or postponement, and we discuss those things, and then we make a decision on them. And some decisions we make are final unless they're appealed, and some are recommendations to the county commission and or the city council.
Okay, and so that's any project, or that's just projects that are outside of what they're officially zoned for?
It just depends. So, for example, if you have a zoning classification that allows a commercial building per se, then they wouldn't have to come back. If they're going to build a commercial building that's allowed in that zone, then they wouldn't have to come to MPC. But there's also parts of the zoning ordinances that are uses on review, which means they're allowed in the zone, but they have to go through a review process which includes going through our staff and coming in Metropolitan Planning Commission.
Okay, so again, I'm fully ignorant on this, and I'm just trying to follow the track. So if I buy, I don't know, I buy some. Let's say, all right, here's one: the old tin roof down on the Strip, right?
Right.
Which used to be O'Charlie's, which I used to work at, which is
Right.
many moons ago. That building's been.
I used to drink there before football games many moons ago.
Then I probably served you there. The early aughts was my tenure down there. So I buy that property, which I know that if I recall correctly, that property includes the liquor store next door and maybe some more of that. But I buy that property and want to demo what was O'Charlie's and put a new bar restaurant building in.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I would need to go to the planning commission, or since it would be
well, it depends. It depends on whether excuse me, if the property was zoned correctly for that type of establishment. You would not. You simply go to your building, the building commission, and get a building permit. If for some reason the zone had changed, or you were using it for something other than what it's zoned for, then you would have to come to the planning commission.
Okay. I think I get it then. And so when we're watching a commission meeting, a city council or a county commission meeting, and they have their review, that's all stuff that's outside of what was originally planned for that spot, zoning wise. Yes. In a nutshell, that's correct.
So, okay. For example, we hear a lot of subdivision cases where people are developing a piece of property, and maybe it's zoned agricultural and they want to zone it planned residential so they can get more density, or, where they can get more units per acre in that property. So they will come to planning commission and ask to get rezoned. If that gets rezoned and it gets approved by the county or city after we make our recommendations, they come back with and if it's planned residential, they come back with their plan, which shows the layout of their subdivision, the lots and et cetera, open spaces. They show all the details basically. And that comes back through us for approval as well, to ensure that, they're abiding by the density that they're allowed, the open spaces, or in the city's case, they have sidewalks. Do they have, the amenities that are required under that particular zone?
Gotcha. And so
we've heard a lot of that.
How do you verify the argument that this is for older families that don't have kids in the house? Because I hear that one all the time on developers trying to put, because that's their response. So we're not going to impact the school system. I've heard that. I've heard that in a number of meetings.
Our staff has a whole lot of. There's a lot of formulas and things of that nature that they use to tell us what the impact is of a subdivision, I don't remember hearing a case where it didn't have any impact on a school system because it was targeted towards older people.
Right, because I live out here on
the
far west side of town, and I've been loosely trying to follow this North Shore Corridor Association fight with that developer. I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about.
Which one is that?
The Tools Bend. I don't know the name of the development, but North Shore Corridor Association has been fighting it.
Is that Bexhill? Is that the Bexhill that they're fighting right now? It was on the news today.
I didn't see it this morning if it was, but maybe it's
yesterday. Maybe
the most recent one. The most recent update I saw on it was that some state court, the county commission had approved it. And then the planning, or this corridor association is suing the developer to stop it. And,
I know exactly which one.
And something about a wastewater thing is not right. It can't have its own wastewater thing, because that was one in following that one that they said this is designed for older families or whatever. And I have kids right here at Rocky Hill Elementary School, which I would assume is where these kids would be zoned for. And it's like we have 6 portable buildings or whatever in the back of the school that are classrooms and stuff like that. It's like Rocky Hill can't hold more kids. Right. So, you could tell, I don't know. And then there's one at Ebenezer and Westland here that big apartment complex just went in, and they said the same thing. It was an older family home or something like that. And it's like, I don't know, with the way Knoxville's growing as quickly as it is, I'm going to guess that a lot of people that are coming to Knoxville are in the pre-kid or early kid stages. So we're going to have a lot more kids in our schools.
Yeah, I think that's true. We were briefed by the Knoxville Realtors 2 meetings ago on Tuesday about the shortage of housing in Knoxville and Knox County, and people that are moving here in droves, and they're seriously, the inventory of available homes is smaller than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And, and let's face it, nobody wants a subdivision next to their subdivision. That's what it comes down to a lot. And last meeting, we hear a lot about traffic concerns. We listen to people complain about the roads are not capable of handling the traffic of a new neighborhood. But unfortunately, in all of Knox County, there's that situation. Most Knox County roads aren't big enough to handle a lot of new developments left the way they are. But unfortunately, roads are not improved. They don't do roads to nowhere. There has to be development out there that is the impetus for the roads to be improved. It's a catch-22.
Yeah. I mean, we've got, what is it, John Sevier, that's kind of a road to nowhere, but it had a long-term plan and then got shut down for other stuff. So how much does the Planning Commission deal with that side of it, or is it just what's existing in conversation? So, like, this North Shore development, like, is there any portion of what the Planning Commission does that says, yeah, okay, it's within zoning requirements, or it's a shift to this zone and it can fit and blah, 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 but roadways and school impacts and like, how much does the Planning Commission do that, or is that something that, like, county roads?
These are all considerations that we take. These are all things we take into consideration when we're considering a case. At least I do. I can speak for everybody, but I mean, in the report the staff prepares for us, there is traffic engineering has weighed in. A lot of times there's traffic impact studies that say that the developer would need to do, for example, a turning lane into the development or out of the development, or redo an intersection. I've seen in that North Shore case you're talking about now, they did a level 3 traffic study, which they had to go all the way back to North Shore Drive and redo the intersection at North Shore.
Right.
If I remember correctly, they asked them to put a red light in or something like that.
And that would be, and is that a normal thing where the developer would be responsible for that upgrade?
It depends. It all depends. I think in that, I can't remember in that case if the developer was doing it all, or if part of that was coming from county funds, or
right.
I can't remember.
Because that's one of the things for me. I
sometimes it's both.
Right, because I argue often as a libertarian, and it's like, well, it's your piece of land. You can do what you want with it. You bought up the piece of land. You can build whatever you want on it. But at the same time, the libertarian is you're responsible for the impact you make.
Right.
And so to say that, you want to build a 1,000-unit apartment complex in this little small lot over in the corner somewhere, okay, great, do it. But when you get 1,000 residents in there, and that involves, what's the standard math? 1.5 cars per resident or per household?
I can't. It varies, but yeah, I think that's
and so the 1,500 cars that your development's going to have to park and then be available to move there and for, that's your responsibility as the building owner. And so again, it's all interesting to me trying to figure out how it all works. Because I mean, you said it in just in passing there. It's like you have engineering, and I'm sure there's like a water, some sort of groundwater,
there is flood control
group and stuff like that.
All of those things.
And so all these people have to come together to show impact, and what the I guess that's the question. That's not really a question for you. It's a question for the commissioners and other people, and I guess a little bit for you guys, is how to weigh out. Like, I don't know, is that part of what you do training wise? Like, you get, like, how do you value an impact study to say that it's a problem, but it's not a problem that says we shouldn't do it, or this is this one thing, there's no way we can do this because of this one item?
So for example, let's talk about traffic for a second. So I myself rely heavily on our traffic engineering department and their opinions as to whether or not there is going to be a substantial impact on the roads in the area or hazards. And there's also levels of development. Now, off the top of my head, I think I think traffic impact study kicks in at like 70 units. So if you got a development with 70 houses, they have to do a traffic impact study. And I'm using the number 70 is off the top of my head. It may be 78 or 80 or something, or 65. I can't recall.
Approximately, good.
Yes, and there's different levels of traffic impact studies. I think level 3 is pretty high, where they have, and that determines how far away they have to check the traffic. So in the North Shore case, they went all the way back down to North Shore Drive, and there was 3 or 4 intersections it required work on. They had to widen the road at the subdivision and do turn lanes in and turn lanes out, and I think that was all developer costs. But in that particular case, I voted for that because they weren't. I don't even think it was a rezoning. I think it was a use on review. I think the zone was appropriate for 1 to 3 units per acre. I think, if I'm recalling, I think everything was fine. And they, I think the suit is involved, revolves around the wastewater treatment plant they were going to put in, which would have been great for that peninsula. They were going to serve the whole peninsula out there, even the existing homes.
Like, I get it on the legal standpoint, but at the same time, it's like, that is a significant cost that developer is putting on that takes it off of me that lives not far down the road, but wouldn't be necessarily connected to that, but takes pressure off of my wastewater and stuff and the surrounding community, which I don't know. I'd have to get KUB in here to talk to them about what their wastewater capacity is or how all that part of it works. But I would assume, again, that's something that you guys look into, and to take that whole section off of the surrounding community seems like a positive to me. I mean, in fairness, nobody wants to go play in the river where the poo comes out, but that is part of the process of what we have to do to live civilized, for lack of a better word.
The thing is about the wastewater treatment plant situation there is when a lot of those homes out there are on septic systems, and I know septic systems are designed to take care of that, but they're ultimately in the ground. Ultimately, that stuff everything seeps through the ground into the water at somehow, some way. And of course, in my simple mind, that's what I believe. A wastewater treatment plant would have fixed that.
Well, I have a secondary argument on that. That's a whole big hullabaloo for me personally. Because again, the question would be: would that particular case, was wastewater going to be managed by a new utility that the developer was putting in, or would that go into a KUB property?
KUB.
Yeah. Well, screw those guys. I'm not happy with it.
I don't think anybody is.
Well, everybody that's listening to the show hears me complain about it all the time. Like, I'm out here in the county. I had septic. To me, it was a bonus for the house because wastewater is not cheap.
Right.
And so not having wastewater was nice. And I plan on staying here for a while. And so, but my septic tank, pun intended, shit the bed. And I was looking into what I needed to do to repair it, and it's a state law issue. If septic or if wastewater is available, I have to hook up. And so it just so happened that last summer, KUB came and ran a sewage line down the street. And so I have wastewater available, so I have to hook up, and then I have to pay KUB to allow me to hook up, and that's where I got real mad. Right. But because again, I get it. I don't hate the idea of having wastewater. I just hate the idea of having to pay for access to wastewater to then pay for my wastewater dealings. Because it's one of those relationship things. It's we're all neighbors, we got to balance out our own function with our neighbors' needs and stuff like that. But again, like I feel like that was just like you said at the beginning. It's the neighbors don't want this giant development next door, and they found the thing that they could complain about being the wastewater thing, and that's what's stopping the development. And again, I'm on this particular one. I am somebody that will be impacted by that increase in traffic and new students in the school systems and that kind of stuff. But it's one of the bigger, broader questions that I talk to a lot of the elected officials about too. It's like we've got I think it was Larson was on here and he was talking about, and I think he said it came from you guys. I don't know who he cited, but that there was over the next 10 years, we're looking at, or 20 years, 10 or 20 years, I can't remember what he said, 250,000 new Knox County residents is what we're estimating.
Yeah, something like that.
Do you remember if that came from you guys? I thought he said it came from you guys.
Probably. That probably came from one of our studies.
And so it's like that's 50% population increase.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of places in town where there's already a good amount of population, but these new people have to go somewhere. And I guess that's one of the questions I ask all the time. And like the first part is, we can't necessarily control people that want to live here, and we can't tell them, no, you can't move here from New York or California or whatever. But at the same time, there are things we can do to minimize growth. And I know this is not necessarily your commission issue, but it's one of those things that I've talked to the politicians about is like, is this something that we have had a community conversation about how much growth we want? Do we want to encourage growth? Obviously we do. If you just look and watch the actions, I mean, the whole baseball stadium project is obviously, this is a growth item. We want to grow and put more things in.
Right.
But it's one of those, when I look back at it, it's like, I don't remember having that conversation publicly, like that, how we want to grow as a city being a public conversation. It's just an assumed we're doing it.
I think politicians in general are, I think most of them are pro-growth, pro-financial growth.
Right. And and to be fair, I'm not against growth by that statement, but I just think it's one of those that we just talk about it with the assumption that it's going to happen. But then we don't even really talk about how to handle it. We just talk about how good it is.
Yeah, and city went through this whole rezoning situation here 2 years ago called Recode, and we hired a consultant, spent $300,000, and they basically rewrote the city's zoning ordinances, and went through a whole bunch of stuff. And there's a lot about that Recode that was good, but I voted against it twice, and I've said it in public twice. I voted against it because there were some things in it that I didn't think it needed to be. There were some things in there where they, and if you ask staff, they'll tell you we notified everybody that property was being changed through this Recode, and maybe they did legally, but I always felt like the people that property was being impacted that should have had a chance to opt out of it if they wanted to. And we've seen some cases where people's property was rezoned in that Recode, just blanket rezone, that it changed the available uses of their property without their consent. And I just disagree with that kind of thing. There was also some building materials requirements in a couple of the zones in Recode that I don't think planning commission should be dealing with. I don't think we should be doing architectural requirements. That's up to the architects and the subdivisions and their own private requests with what they do.
Right, and but like buildings, the building department will be the one that checks to make sure for like structural issues, right? Like as far as safety wise.
Correct.
So that's
yes.
not, yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm talking about land use.
Yeah.
Period. I'm not talking about particular buildings. But anyway,
so that Recode thing was a product of the mayor's office that you guys got input on as part of the commission. Am I understanding?
Well, our staff hired and worked with a consulting company to revamp the entire city code.
Okay, but that was at request of the mayor's office. Is what I'm guessing.
That's correct.
Okay, so
yes.
And so like if county decided that they wanted to do some work on zoning. Mm-hmm. And changing some of the zoning, which I don't know. Are they doing anything with that right now? No.
There's kind of a push right now. I'm hearing some stuff that they want to. We need to review the sector plans. We also in the county. We also need to look at the long range plans because some of them are so outdated.
Right, especially with this new growth.
Yeah, and they haven't been. That's right. And we get a huge pushback with people. People are moving here, like Hardin Valley, for example, is a popular place for people to move to, and every time somebody wants to develop their property out there, of course, it's all agricultural. They come to us for rezoning. And of course, the people that live in the subdivisions that have already been done are complaining that they don't want more subdivisions out there. And schools are overbooked. The traffic is a problem. And I live out there. I live in Carnes, and I travel that road quite a bit. And quite frankly, other than rush hour and they're fixing the intersection at Pellissippi, that's really the only place I've ever seen that there's a traffic problem out there.
Right.
And you mentioned being a libertarian. I guess that's probably how you could classify me. I'm a huge property rights person. And And I think within reason and within the law, someone should be able to develop their property as they see fit. And again, within the zones, within the plans. But sometimes the plans are outdated and they don't make sense. And it makes sense to change them. So, having said that, I don't believe just because the public people around it don't want another person to be able to develop his property. That's not a good reason in my mind to tell someone no.
Right, because we'd be like 3 city blocks if that was the rule from the beginning.
That's right. Because
everybody that's here doesn't want the next neighborhood next door ever.
Right.
Again, continuously. And in my history of paying loose attention to it, these developers are pretty phenomenal in squeezing stuff into small spaces. Like, it's pretty crazy. Where they can somehow put 25 houses, and it's like, that was like a half an acre. How'd you squeeze that many houses in there? Like, it doesn't make sense but they know what they're doing. And I agree.
Well, we manage that. We try to manage that as well. Our staff, we're, and there's a push both ways right now. I think in the city there's a push to reduce the footprint or the units per acre, and in the county there's a push to try to increase them within a reason because so many people are moving here, and naturally a developer wants to get as many units per acre, or an owner, or let's say developer. I guess if somebody's developing their own property, they become a developer by default. But you take a private person, if they can get 2 more units per acre on a 40-acre tract, that's 80 units, 80 more lots. So naturally they like to do that. But also, having said that, when you increase the density, you also increase the developer or owner's ability to put in amenities because they've got more cash flow to deal with.
Right, they get to spread it out across all the units.
That's right.
And the more number of units is, the less impact per unit on items like that. And so, if I heard you correctly there, the city's trying to push for less density?
I think that's just my feeling.
Right.
I think they have to have density in the city because the lots are smaller. But and then of course the downtown area is different than the surrounding areas in the city, and then you get out in the county, it's completely different. But I think my feeling is there's a big push to have less density by some of our commissioners and some people that are in the city influence.
Yeah, because I'm on I go ranting on everybody. One of my little pet project things is I think for commercial use in the city, everything needs to be like that Publix Walmart down on campus. The parking lot underneath thing, I think that needs to be that's something that you guys should add to code for any new developments. Because I live way out here on the west side of town, but you drive down Kingston Pike, it's miles and miles of parking lots with buildings in the back. And it's like, we're running out of space, and you could have 3 times as many commercial units on the same piece of land if you just had the parking lot underneath for people. But plus, it's really nice in the summer when it's super hot and sunny, and you can go park in the garage and you're underneath, and it's more comfortable. There's so many bonuses to that, except for the developer and the cost. I'm sure it costs a lot to put a building on stilts like that. But it's what they say. But that's one of to me, that's one of the naturals of growth. Like, that's one of the solutions to dealing with the growth we're looking at and not having parking lots everywhere. I hate parking lots.
Yeah. I don't think anybody really likes parking lots, but they're a necessity.
Right. For now, maybe we'll see. We'll see how this electric bus push goes, but that's a whole separate ball of wax, I guess, for me. I'm trying to think of where I want to go from here because I'm fully fascinated by all the different aspects of what's going on here. Is it a term limited job? Going back to just some of the basics of the job.
That's a good question. And
let me rephrase the question.
My short answer is we're appointed, not elected. So technically, by law, we're not term limited.
But is it termed in the sense that you have a 2-year term?
The city mayor and Mayor Burchett had a non-binding agreement that they would abide by term limits for our commission. I am in my 3rd term on this commission.
How long is the term?
4 years.
Okay.
So Mayor Jacobs, that when he was elected, got to know him a little bit, and he asked me to stay on simply from the experience situation.
And if you lean libertarian, he probably likes you more.
Yeah, I guess I would assume. But he asked me to stay for a third term, which created a little bit of a turmoil, I think. But I agreed to. Yes, so I'm in I think I have 2 years left on this term, and then I'll be.
So you're a decade. You're a decade into this mess. Yeah,
pretty much. And sometimes I ask myself, people will go, "Why do you do that?" I said, well, I wish I could give you a really good answer for that.
Because then when
sometimes I wish I was.
Because as long as you're doing it, when the developer comes to put a neighborhood next to you, you got some control over it.
Well, I don't worry too much about that. We've seen a couple of cases that we had a case a couple of months ago that was it was going to be a halfway house, so to speak, people in drug rehab, and it was half a mile from my house, and everybody in the area was complaining they didn't want one of these recovery houses in their neighborhood. And I said, well, if not there, where? Nobody wants a recovery. Nobody wants it, but everybody knows we need it.
Right.
And I voted for it. I mean, it was right down the street from my house, but I think we've got to look at the whole picture, and can't just say no. Nobody wants the sewage treatment plant in their backyard, but everybody needs a sewage treatment. Right. You know what I'm saying?
What we need to do is we need to take a section of town. I don't know where, and then just put all the things that nobody wants to live next to in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then put a bunch of like industrial around it, which nobody cares about. And then, so we have a little bit of a buffer before we get to residential. And so we have a super planned thing that somehow we'll never get away with. Because I'm trying to think of where, even just for experimental sake, I don't even know where you could start to think about doing something like that. It'd have to be way out in the outskirts of the county. And you just buy some farm. And we put all the stuff that nobody wants there, and then everybody pitches a fit because we're ostracizing these poor people to be way out there.
That's exactly right. That's the argument. And then you think about the goal of a halfway house, or a goal of rehabilitation is to assimilate people back into society. And so what you're saying is, okay, let's assimilate them back into society, but let's segregate them way out in the boonies where they're not around anything.
I mean, we could go down a whole rabbit hole of the legal system and the issues inside the legal system and stuff to boot. And so it's a mess all over. And I think you hit it spot on. It's like these are things we agree that we need, and there's never going to be a location that everybody's happy with. No. And so, whomever is wanting to do this project, we need to be supportive of it, because the grand goal is what the point is here. And it's not like we don't know what's there. It's not like you won't know that it's there, and you can't take measures to protect yourself and your family from issues that could potentially, maybe, possibly arise from it. But most people that I don't know, I don't know the stats on that, but I think most people that want to get their life together and get going will play by the rules and be probably better neighbors than your actual neighbors.
That's generally the case. There was a case out on Oak Ridge Highway a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that I can't remember which agency it was, but they were expanding and using that as a drug treatment, an immediate drug treatment place, where instead of going to jail, if somebody was on drugs, they took them out there, and the neighborhood, just all the people around it, and it's kind of isolated anyway with a fence around it. Everybody was just up in arms, afraid of the mass problems they were going to have with crime and this and that. As far as I know, I don't think there's been any issues with it since it was installed 2 or 3 years ago. Right.
There's just the assumption of what the problem will be, not what.
Right.
Not an actual real problem exists. And I'm sure somewhere in your department you got somebody that can pull studies for it.
Right.
They can look into that kind of stuff. So 4-year terms, appointed position. Theoretically, it's a 2-year term or a 2-term limited thing, but they don't necessarily. It's not required. It's just
That's right.
It was a gentleman's agreement that has now been passed on in future persons.
Right.
That'll be fun. Anything to get Mayor Jacobs in trouble. I'm sorry, Mayor Jacobs. It's not my intent here.
I don't think he's going to get in trouble over that.
I guess it's one of those. I get in arguments all the time because everybody tries to it tries to reference his prior career as an insult almost. Like it's a look how stupid we are as a county because we elected a wrestler, and it's like I don't know. I have my opinions on the mayor and his activities and his policies, but I have a history in my employment history and stuff like that. If I ever got into elected office, it doesn't bode for what I will or won't do as an elected official. I think it's just such a dumb, it's such a weak argument. If you don't like his policies, pick his policies apart and give me reasons why his policies suck. Don't just go, well, he was a wrestler. Well, so what? If
his stories, I don't know if you've read his story. His story's pretty amazing. And I kind of, the first time I met him, he came to speak at I guess he was running for office. I think it was Associated Building Contractors. We were doing something and he came to speak to us for a luncheon. And this was way back when he was running for office. And I kind of had that thought myself. I said, we're going to elect a wrestler as a county mayor. But as I've gotten to know him, he's top notch guy. He's a smart guy.
Yeah. So it's like to me, it's like if there's anything that is true about wrestlers is that they are hardworking, dedicated. Yep. They have stage presence, which as a politician is a bonus, not necessarily for me and you constituent that they have good stage presence, but for the activities of the job, they're comfortable in front of a crowd and talking. I mean, he spent most of his career in his underwear in front of thousands of people. Right. He's perfectly comfortable speaking in front of people, but the hard work and dedication part, again, it's, he's going to do the work. You got to do the work to physically do that job. And that's to me, that's a plus personally, is that your willingness to go through the pain and effort of doing that stuff shows the dedication that if it's a thing that you want to do, you put the work in. And so shifting it from being big, strong muscle wrestler guy to whatever policy project he has, he's going to put the work in to do it. And I think that's a pro in a politician, at least. Whether the policy I agree with or not is a whole separate conversation. But exactly. The work ethic part I think is important because I think that's something that's lacking in general nowadays. That's a bigger, broader, whatever. I'm trying not to go too far off into random planning commission stuff with you.
Planning.
So again, so when the broader zoning conversation comes up, that is something that your office does and then agrees upon. And then that goes to commissions and mayors to be approved for. And you were saying...
In most cases, it's a recommendation. And let me think if I can get this right. In matters of rezoning, those are recommendations to this county commissioner and city council. In matters of use on reviews and those kind of things, our decisions are final unless someone appeals to the county commission, city council. And then ultimately they can also go to court, as you've seen in the development out on North Shore. Okay.
Because again, I don't know, like we kind of touched on it, and I guess it's one of those, you guys are waiting for instructions to do so. I mean, I think the broader conversation about updating and especially like the future plans, is that stuff available? The sector planning and the long term?
Yeah, you can look at the website. Which is, let me think here. It used to be npc.org, but now I think it's planning.org. Let me look right quick. So I'm sitting right here.
I mean, I can throw it in show notes.
Yeah, it's
not a big deal.
It's knoxmpc.org. That's
okay.
The website. And you can look at the plans and studies. You can look at data. You can look at the meeting updates. You can look back at prior meetings to see what happened. And,
so do you guys get good turnout for meetings? Do a lot of people show up?
Yeah, generally there's quite a bit. During the COVID, we've been on Zoom this last month. It was our first in-person meeting in a year and a half, I guess, year and 4 months.
Right.
And I've prefer the in-person meetings. No question, hands down.
But so it's generally the person trying to change, trying to get approval, and then all the people, and then a group of people that don't want it. Is that usually the turnout? I don't know. How do you deal with that? Like, that's one of those things that, I mean, it seems to be the norm. The mask things and the Board of Health things being one of them that we got to see in bright colors this year. Is that it seems that generally it's the opposition is the one that always shows up. Like, how many times have you had somebody sit down, come and present something that had a little bit of controversy to it or whatever, that there was anybody in the room other than the developer themselves that was advocating for?
And we have seen people that are there for particular cases. We've seen cases that we hear. If it's involving a sector plan, it's going to be on the agenda. And there's times when there's no opposition, and of course, I think our chair behooves when there's no opposition, behooves the plaintiff, if you will, to say, okay, well, let's go with staff recommendations, but to make it quicker. But our format basically is you have the petitioner and you have opposition. When we hear the case, there's a little bit of a briefing, sometimes by staff, because usually the briefings happen on Tuesday by staff, and they can get pretty lengthy, so we don't go through everything. But the petitioner gets 5 minutes, and the opposition gets 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes, if there's 3 people want to speak, each one of them is divided by 3. Sometimes if in matters that are pretty controversial, we'll allow a commissioner has the freedom to say, let's give them 5 more minutes. But we limit the discussion to 5 minutes on each side. And then, of course, it goes to commission. Commission has comments. We'll turn our light on and we'll make comments about this case and discuss it amongst ourselves. And then somebody makes a motion, somebody seconds, there's a vote. And
then it goes to county commission or city to kind of do a secondary version, depending on which version, whether it's in the plan or not.
Depending on what the case is,
right.
Yes.
Because, again, like I said, like, it's one of those things to me, like, it seems like a solid size group of opposition is generally who shows up to those things, because
that's true.
As much as the community at large may want said development, people that are for it aren't coming out to support it in the ways that the people that are against it are pushing back on it. And I'm always curious about how, as an official in an official capacity, you kind of justify the math. Because, again, I'm not intending to do it this way, but it's kind of like, the anti-mask crowd that was very loud and vocal and showed up to commission meetings and all this stuff all the time. And it's like, as a county commissioner, I could see it being very easy to be like, look at all these people that want me to put an end to this thing. But the reality is that's a small group of the larger group that is opposed to it, that is a portion of the entirety of the constituency. It's just that the pro team, the pro in this particular, doesn't come out to advocate for the way. And so, I don't know, in your experience, you have, is there how does that jive for some of the meetings you've been into, and how you kind of try to balance that?
It does. One of the things about our commission is we are appointed. We're not elected. So therefore we have a little bit more ability to make our decisions outside of the mob influence, so to speak.
Right. You're not worried about getting elected next year. Right.
We're not worried about getting elected or anything like that, or them cutting our pay. So I think that gives it a sense of gives me a sense of being able to make a decision without that influence. So, and I have told people before when they talk about this, look, if you have a huge problem with anything that's going on, you need to talk to your county commissioner. They can make decisions based upon the mob influence if they want to. That's their purview. I feel like we have more of a responsibility to the property use and land use and that kind of thing, and things that make sense, as opposed to making decisions just based on because the neighborhood doesn't want it.
Right. Okay. So one of my standard questions for government persons, whatever we want to, I'm trying to figure out the broader way because you're not an elected official,
Right.
Is there anything recent that you feel has kind of been fairly major that hasn't got any attention? Because one of my complaints and one of my part of the genesis of why I do this is that I have a hard time keeping up with all the things going on, and some of it's just because there's so much, but the other part is lack of coverage. I mean, like, I try every once in a while, but like I can't watch local news anymore. I can't spend the 22 minutes of 6 minutes of sports, 6 minutes of weather, 6 minutes of national news, and then 4 minutes of local news and get any real value out of it. And so with the sources I have, it's hard to keep up without doing it directly, which is what I'm ending up doing, which I don't have the bandwidth to keep up with all the parts and pieces. So I always just kind of like, what's a big thing going on right now that I'm sure there's no coverage of, that you haven't heard it, like other than you guys in meetings and stuff like that.
Right.
But you haven't seen in the
let's
paper.
Face it, nobody follows what's going on the planning commission for the most part.
I was trying to be generous with my wording, but
I mean, Recode is a great example that happened, like we talked about a couple of years ago. People's property uses got changed, and although I think they did a good job of trying to get notices out, but people just don't pay attention to it. And then when they find out a year later, 2 years later, that they can't do something with their property because the zoning's been changed, and they got to come back and request it to be changed back or request a new zoning, they're mad about it. And the truth is, I mean, I don't really blame them, because be honest with you, if I wasn't on commission, there's a lot of things that go on consent that I go through them, but I don't investigate there might be 70 cases and 60 of them are on consent. I look at those, but I can't remember every one of those and what's going on with a particular piece of property.
Right.
And so, people in general are going to work and making a living. They're too busy they're not going to turn on channel 12 at 1:30 in the afternoon on the second Thursday of every month and watch what we do.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of my general issues. It's like, I've mentioned a couple times I got kids and stuff, and it's like, so I'm trying to watch council and commission, just the actual county commission meetings. They're in the middle of dinner.
Right.
It's like, I've tried to get the kids fed, got a couple of weeks. I don't get the excuse of homework and stuff in a couple of weeks because we've got summer finally, but it's like kids fed, homework done, baths and all those important, like, staying alive things that you have to do for your children. And sure. I'm trying to watch a commission meeting, and in the middle of the commission meeting, they go into the zoning part of it. And I'm like, so between the ability to focus on it and the ability to understand what's happening, which I'm getting better at the latter, at least I'm getting how the pieces work now, but just I get it as a constituent, how hard it is to try to keep up with all the parts and pieces. And that's what I'm trying to figure out how to do better at personally, and then share that through the show. These are major things that are happening, and again, the reason I reached out to your office in the first place was that it's becoming apparent to me, especially with commission and city councilors, when I talk to them, like, the mayors have a whole separate animal of things, but one of the biggest things that commission and council are doing are land use stuff.
Right.
And as you said, nobody pays attention or knows or has an understanding of what is and what isn't, unless it's something unless it's their neighbor. That's the only time it jumps up in importance. And I think that's one of those things that we as a constituency need to figure out how to have at least a better understanding of. We don't all need to go down the rabbit hole, but we do need to be like, there is a necessity for these things. We need to have a general understanding of whys and whatnots. And then more on top of that, you're in an appointed position. And so the people that appoint you, the mayors, need to be held account for the actions that you guys do, because that's the way the relationship of an appointee should work. It's like, hey, Mayor Jacobs, you put this guy in, and he's putting, he's allowing, brothels in next to a school, and that's not something that we're okay with. We need to fix that, and then we can hold the right person to account, because I didn't,
That's right.
I was under, like, before we talked, I was like, I don't know if it's a paid position. You'd mentioned it as appointments. I didn't, I hadn't put any consideration to how you got said job. in the first place, and then let alone like the terms and whether it's a volunteer job, which you explained it is, and so. Because I'm always curious, because again, I'm on this little split path where part of me is like, well, I need to get into this like in official capacity and go get appointed to a position or go run for an office so that I can understand better. But then I have way too much fun doing this, and to take any office would then become a conflict for me to continue doing the show. And so I'm going to stick with the show part of it and try to do as much exposing in a not dirty way as I can about all the different things that are going on, because I try really hard not to I have my opinions, but I try really hard not to make that the point of the show. The point of the show is to let you come on here and let commissioners come on here and talk about what's going on, and what we're missing by apathy is probably most of it. And because I can't hate on the news for not showing it because nobody watches it,
right?
And it's a chicken or the egg, I guess. But if we're not going to engage as a public, then I have a long road to make this a profitable podcast, at least. So I don't know. So nothing in particular is going on. Just a general. Nobody pays attention at all.
There's a lot of big things going on in Knoxville with the baseball stadium, for example.
Okay, yeah, good one.
You've got baseball stadium going on. You've got I think it's Amazon moving out where Easttown used to be. Easttown Mall was. There's a lot of stuff going on in that regard, and in those particular cases, let's talk about the baseball stadium, for example. I voted for that. I think it's a great thing for the city of Knoxville. It should have happened probably back when the Smokies ended up going up to Sevierville to begin with.
If I hear this, so if I understand the story correctly, and some listener can correct me if they want, I doubt it because they probably don't know any better. But my understanding of it was the old ownership of the Smokies wanted to stay in town, but didn't want to stay in East Knoxville. And the county and city both said, we'll help you stay, but you're staying in East Knoxville. And that's when they left.
I don't know. I don't remember. I was around back then. I think I was actually in the military back then. But
what branch? I have to ask.
Army.
Okay.
I was in the Army.
It's acceptable. My jarhead co-host will, as long as it's not Air Force, is pretty much where he draws the line.
Yeah, there you go.
But so I have to ask when I have one on.
The Air Force slept between the sheets every night. We, on the other hand, did not.
I saw a funny meme about with the addition of the Space Force or whatever. It had this little joke about everybody's got their couple, and it's like just the Army is the single guy. You got the Navy and the Marines that are a couple, and then you have the Air Force and the Space Force that are a couple. So people sitting on the bench. Anyway, it's a funny meme. I thought it was hilarious for my non-militariness.
Yeah.
But
anyway, so getting back to the baseball stadium, where you were asking me a question about it. So I don't know exactly. I think it was more of a. I think some of the people owned properties in the city where they wanted to locate it were pushing back, and I think the politics of it got too great.
Right.
The same thing happened back in the day with H.C. Hackney. They were going to locate it off Washington Pike, and it was going to be a great. In my opinion, it was going to be a great campus out there. It's going to be employees, and all that kind of thing. And the county commission ended up turning it down, and they ended up going to Loudoun County.
Yeah,
I think Knox County lost a lot. They lost a very responsible business organization because of the politics of it. And I've heard arguments about the money that's being spent for the baseball stadium, and why the county and the city have to get involved. And there's a lot of reasons why they get involved. And first of all, they're not spending money. Our city and county, when they set up this sports authority, the money that they're putting into this is an investment because they get immediate return with the taxes that are coming back to the city and county through this development.
Okay, well, let me pause you right there because that's one of the parts where I'm still confused on is the TIF and pilot programs that are just how they work in general. Payment in lieu of taxes would be what if I understand correctly. So like the current format on the baseball project or the multi-use stadium project is the stadium itself is whatever, but the $140 million that Boyd has promised to build around it. If that gets pilot programmed, what would be the change in property tax for that instead of going to the city and county and property tax will go to pay off the loan. Is that how pilot works?
I believe how this is working is that and I'm sure it's way more complicated than this, but the state has voted to allow
$13.5 million,
county,
right?
The city and county to capture the state portion of the sales tax for these projects, for this particular area, for the Sports Authority's investment.
Right. My understanding on that particularly is the actual stadium itself, yes. The surrounding property, no. The sales tax from the surrounding property is going to go in normal, but
I think that's right.
That's where the $13.5 million comes from the new state budget. Is instead of letting us not pay state sales tax on it and collect that and keep it, they're just going to pay this lump sum up front because we're flush because we actually did a lot of sales through Corona, which we didn't expect, and so all the budget stuff on that end of it. I get that part of it, but I had Mamontoff and Welch and Caldwell in here, and we were talking about it. There's like a $500,600,000 portion that the county and the city are going to pay directly. The county has already said that they're going to pay it out of hotel motel tax. The city's still trying to figure out where it's coming from. And then the $13.5 million from the state, the sales tax generated inside the stadium for tickets and concessions and merchandise in the stadium. That's going to come back, but there's another million or so a year that, and this is where I get most confused, that Manitoff was explaining to me is going to come from either the TIF or the pilot programs attached to the surrounding stuff. And so I don't understand though I think I tried to explain pilots as I understand it, which I might be wrong, which I guess is the question. Like, how do these pilot programs, what do they do? Do you understand them? Is that in your wheelhouse? I don't know if I'm asking you a question that's in your wheelhouse or not.
It's not in the plan. It's not so much in planning's wheelhouse as much as it is in your mind as to why. I mean, as a citizen, why I think it's a great idea. And I've discussed this with our politicians as well, and I'm a businessman, and my business is in the city. We've been here since 1966. And
I mean, you can plug it if you want.
I said, a part of me, I'm Quality Machining Welding Company. We're a structural steel fabricator and erector. Been here a long time. We've got 130 employees, and we're located off Cherry Street in the inner city. And
perfect, good plug, solid plug.
But so, what I've said to both our mayors when we talk about these things is, TIFs make sense to me because they're not actually spending money, they're investing money. And you liken it to investing money in a business. Well, that's not really spending money. You're buying in for the opportunity to get a return. Right. The city and county get returns when these businesses grow and they pay more in taxes. They get the return on that. Now, having said that, I get aggravated sometimes with the TIFs they're giving these companies. Well, let's give this company a tax break for 10 years and get him here, and they're going to bring 200 employees here. Well, hell, I've been here since 1966, and every time I've expanded, you just increased my tax base. I didn't get a TIF to do anything.
Right, and I've heard a couple of candidates moving forward talking about trying to open up some of these TIF and pilot programs to smaller budget versions of it, instead of it only being the big players getting these options, that making it available for smaller business. And I just in the general realm of fairness, I think that's right, because I also am a business owner, and I don't. It's not even something that crosses my mind when I go into doing something. It's just like, I'm going and I'm going to pay taxes and I'm going to hire people and I'm going to do all the things. It's not like to go to a Welch or a Caldwell and be like, hey, what can the city or county do to help me do this? It doesn't even cross my mind as an option, because I don't have 500 employees and I'm not putting a $20 million facility in place. It's just not, that's not my business model. And so I'm excited to see some of that moving forward, because I think it's true. And I think it's a fairness. I think it's a fairness thing. And I think it's, long term, it's you don't get an Amazon out of the sky. It doesn't just appear. Yeah. It started.
There was some opposition. There was some opposition.
I have opposition to it personally, but I'm concerned.
In a great world, I do too. I would much rather. There were some suggestions that people would rather see a mixed use development out there and doing all that. But the fact is, nobody's standing in line to do that.
Right.
And Amazon was willing to come in here and do that and create some jobs, and on a community level. And I think that particular area is probably a good place for it. But no, again, nobody wants it in their back door, but everybody wants to pick up their phone and order stuff from Amazon.
Right. Well, see, that's my concern with it in the grand scheme of things is going to be that when you have same day delivery, how is that going to affect other like style retailers in the area? Right. Where the one thing that
sound good.
Right, the one thing that I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example like there's like the Knoxville soap company or whatever that's somewhere around here. They have a little retail manufacturing place. They do custom, high quality natural soaps or whatever. Right. Well, one of the big things that they have is that they have I can walk in there and grab my soap and go home. Well, when I can get same day from Amazon on my soap, I can just order it from Amazon and have it delivered that afternoon and have soap in time for my bath. And so that's my concern long term with this Amazon facility. And don't get me wrong, I'm a junkie and I buy like most of this studio I bought off of Amazon. So, but at the same time, most of this equipment isn't available locally, at least not with the range of options that I wanted on some of the equipment I bought. But so does the city own the property that Easttown Mall was on, or is that?
I don't think so.
Okay, because that was one of the things I was thinking about. So I don't know where to go from here. I think we're done. I think I ran out of stuff. I could keep going for hours, but I'm running out. We're going out of the realm of whatever. But I think I think there's an importance to what you guys are doing that the lack of attention doesn't have. I agree, and I don't know. I'll start pushing it as much as I can, but I think a real discussion of the growth plan moving forward, because I throw the idea out all the time. I'm an advocate for discussion. I won't say I'm an advocate for, but I'm an advocate for discussion of going metro here in town. We're getting to the point in population and growth that it's going to be a necessity sooner than later. And so this is one of those things, government tends to be reactionary. And this is one of the things to me that we can be proactive in, that will help manage the growth better, is going metro and becoming one unified government instead of having these two bodies that go back and forth, not including Farragut and their weirdness.
Right. That's been an argument that's been around a long time.
Right. And the only response I get is that it's not politically.
Right.
It's a politics issue. It's not a best use for constituency conversation. It's the politics of how the city government and the county government collide on a number of issues is going to make it hard to, which means that all that really means is that I have to go out and do the legwork and make it a ballot item, which is ridiculously hard to do. But at some point at some point it'll happen, just because it'll have to happen. But again, like I said, I think planning is important, and being prepared for the growth is what's important. And so
that's right.
Anything we can do to start those discussions in a broader sense, instead of everything being we got to do this because that happened and this happened and that happened, and then it's just I don't know. It's always how many Band-Aids can you put on until you make a cast?
That's right.
If the arm's broken, let's just fix the broken arm instead of putting another layer of wrap on it. I don't know. That's all I got. You want to plug your business one more time just for funnies? If you want to. That's not what you came on here for, but I'll support it. I'm looking at doing what I'm wanting to do is a shed in the yard to move my studio out of the basement into there so that we can do that. So I might have to call you off, get you off air and talk about getting me a metal building built.
There you go. There you go.
Well, but
we don't do a lot of pre-engineered metal buildings. We're all custom, but I can point you in that right direction.
Well, I'll take whatever help I can
But you
get.
might have to go through MPC to get your to get it approved.
I know. I got to look at. I do need to I need to pull up my KGIS and see what my zoning availability is. I'm pretty sure just because of the comps in the area, I've got a number of neighbors that have detached garages. And so I'm pretty sure I can get away with it. Like my neighbor next door, he had a big mess with, I assume you guys, when because his house is way back on the lot, and he had a detached garage that's very close to the lot line. But since it's a detached garage, it was okay. But when he was remodeling his house, he was basically filling in the gap between his house and the garage to make it all one building, which then put his house too close to the property line, and so he had a big.
Right.
He had a big workings on and goings on with trying to get his plans approved. Because he was in a weird spot. Like we said earlier, he's got septic, but his leach field's in the front yard. So he can't build forward on top of his leach field. His house is too old to build up. And so the only direction he could go put him in a weird spot, and so he had a big mess. But he finally got it done, and it looks nice. And then I put a fence up so I don't have to see it even more. So, but anyway, that's all I've got. I got an outro to do. I appreciate you coming on. I'll have this packed up and posted this afternoon if you want to tell your friends about it. Is there anything else you want to get out before we call it a show?
No, I think it's great. I appreciate
right.
you calling and enjoyed talking with you.
It was very fun. We'll have to do it again sometime. Outro music. How cool was that? So knoxmpc.org. That's the website for the Metropolitan Planning Commission. You can go on there and check out and learn some more new and interesting things about what's going on and how to follow and get on board with some of the different things that go on. And like we were talking about, there is an importance to these planning decisions. These change neighborhoods, this changes the way, and this is how we manage the growth that we are expecting and we're going to get whether we like it or not. So we need to be proactive in how we grow instead of just dealing with it as it goes. So Jeff Roth, everybody from the Metropolitan Planning Commission, really appreciate you coming on. We are Almost in Agreement, almostinagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our website is up and running. It is almostinagreement.com. You can go there. All the episodes are available about the same time they release on your major podcast providers. Go to your major podcast provider, subscribe, like, share, all those fun things. Help us get the word out. We're going to keep working through different stuff. I've got some candidates for city coming up later this week, and we're just going to continue rolling on and going through and learning as much as we can and understanding as little as I do. It'll be a long time before we don't have any more content to do. So we're almost in agreement. Thanks for listening, everybody.